We are going to be working with this little macaw, military macaw here. And what we're going to be doing is kind of blurring the background using some blur menu commands and also using the blur gallery. So we are going to convert both of these layers into smart objects. And all you have to do is right click on the layer and choose convert to smart object. And the reason we're doing that is so that we can apply multiple filters and then we can selectively turn them on and off. Or if we decided that we wanted to edit one of the filters, we can simply double click on it and go back in and edit it. So converting to smart objects gives us a lot of flexibility. Now we're going to start with blur menu commands. So you're going to select that layer. And we are going to select the bird. And then we're going to give a command to inverse the selection so the background will be selected. Now I'm going to zoom in just a little bit because it's a little easier for me to see the bird. And I'm going to use the quick selection tool. It does a fairly good job on most of the bird. But for his feet and this little feather sticking down here, it's not going to do a very good job. So I'm going to do Q to get into quick mask. And I'm going to paint in white. Get his feet. And I'm going to change my size of my brush here. Remember, you paint in white to add. And you paint in black to remove. Get the little feather in here. I'm going to do a Q to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, it looks like I might have missed a little bit of his back. Get through here. And probably over here a little bit too. Oops, looks like it missed just a little bit on top of his head. And I think I missed a claw down here. Okay, so that's pretty good. Good enough. I'm going to zoom out again. Now what I'm going to do is inverse this. So I'm going to go to select and inverse. And now everything except for the bird is selected. And this is what I'm going to be applying the filter to. So I'm going to go to filter, blur, and I'm going to choose Gaussian to start with. Now, even though it's showing our little bird friend as being blurred, you can tell because we have preview on that he's not going to be blurry. Okay, sometimes in these preview windows it shows that way, and that's not what's going to happen. So for the Gaussian blur, you can see that the background is blurred, and the higher the radius, the more blurring occurs until you end up with everything pretty much the same color. So I still like a little bit of detail in the background, so I don't want to obscure everything. So I would like you guys to have a radius somewhere between 1 and 5. And again, you know, the closer you are to 5, the more blurry that background is going to be. closer you are to 1, the more clear it will be. And we're going to click OK. And you can see that we have a mask in our thumbnail. Now, if you ever decided you needed to change this mask, you can actually click the thumbnail. You can paint in black and white. Just keep in mind that anything that's underneath white is going to have the filter applied, and anything that's underneath black is going to be protected. Now, what we're going to do is turn Gaussian off, and we're going to do another one. And I'm not showing you every single one in here. I'm just showing you the ones that I think would be most useful. So we're going to do radial. And there's actually 2 different kinds of radial blurs. So we're going to do one, and then we're going to come back in here and do the other one. And we'll start with spin. And I always like to change it to best quality. And as you increase the amount, you will notice that you get this spinning look, almost like it's in a blender or a whirlpool. And what I would like you guys to do is pick some number between 50 and 70. Okay. And then click OK. And you can really see how that looks. Now we're going to turn off radial, and we're going to go back in, and we're going to choose radial again. This time we're going to do zoom. And for the zoom amount, again, somewhere between 50 and 70 is going to be good. And then we're going to go ahead and click OK. Now, once you apply this, if you need to go back in, let's say we want to go in and change it, you double click, and then if you decide you wanted to increase it, go ahead and drag your slider, click OK, and it'll pick up the change. And that is one of the huge advantages of using a smart filter. And let's say for the spin blur, I wanted to decrease it. Whoop, gotta turn it on though. What a smart filter. Say I wanted to pop that down to about 20. And you can see how that looks a little bit different. You can see a little bit more of the background than you could before. So at this point, I'm going to turn all 3 of them off. So we can do one more. And for this one, actually, we're going to do 2 more. We're going to do the smart blur. This is kind of a special effect blur. If you look under mode, you have edge only and overlay. And let me change the quality to high. And you'll notice as you bump the radius up, you can actually see more edges. So all you see are edges and you see no image whatsoever. Okay, so that's edge only. There's also overlay edge, where you can actually see some of the color peeking through. And so what I want you to do is either pick edge only or overlay edge and adjust your settings. And then we're going to click OK. Keep in mind when you're looking at this that it's not going to impact the bird. Okay, it's only the background that is going to be display with all the edges. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And if I was going to use this, I would probably decrease the opacity a little bit. So some of that color from below came through. But I'm going to go ahead and turn that one off. One more. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, and this time we're going to do a shape blur. Now the shapes that it's showing are shapes that are in the Photoshop custom shape libraries. And what's cool about the custom shape libraries is you can actually create your own shapes. We are going to cover that in upcoming weeks. But if you look, a lot of these shapes I actually created. They are not part of the library, so you're not going to have them because I created them. But that is one of the cool things about this library for shapes. You can actually add to it. But what I want you to do is find a shape, and then you're going to adjust the radius. And you can see, especially in this part of the reason I picked this one, with these lines, you can actually see those lines coming through. And not as much with the lower radius, but with the higher radius, you certainly can see it. So you are going to find some shape. It does not matter to me which one you pick. Hopefully there's enough of a pattern that it'll come through. I was pretty sure near the top there are some that should work okay. You can actually see somewhat of a pattern. And then you're going to adjust your radius. And you're going to click OK. And then what I would like you to do is just turn on whatever combination of these little filters that you like. And I should show you too, you don't have to keep these in this order. If you wanted to move the Gaussian to the top, you can just drag it up there. And moving these around does change, you know, how this combined effect looks. So as I said, you know, turn on whatever combination you like. And then we're going to turn off this layer and we're going to use the blur gallery. Now the blur gallery actually is going to let us put pins directly on the image and adjust the level of blurring. And we can actually put a pin or two on the bird to keep him from getting blurry. So we don't have to do a mask with this. So we're going to go to Filter, Blur Gallery, and we're going to use the Field Blur. And you'll see it just automatically sticks this in the middle, makes everything blurry. We're going to drag it to the bird. And to remove the blur, you can either drag this white area to the top or over here where it says blur in the panel, drag it to 0. Now to add controls, what we're going to do is put one up here in the upper right corner, And you'll see because we put one on the bird and we set the blur to no, he's not going to get blurry. And then we're going to put one in the upper left corner. And again, these can be moved. So if you decide, you don't like it quite there, you can move it down. And you can also adjust the level of the blur. Okay, just kind of click on the pins to activate them. And then once you're happy with how it looks, you're going to go ahead and click OK. Now you probably noticed with the blur menu commands that it listed all of them. With the blur gallery, this is similar to what happens with the filter gallery, any kind of a gallery. It doesn't really list the specific command. It's just going to say gallery. Okay, if we wanted to know which specific one, we can just double click, go right back into it. Now we are going to do another one, so we're going to turn this one off. And for this one, we are going to use the iris blur. And we're going to move the iris blur more on the bird. And the iris blur has lots of controls. The outer perimeter adjusts the size. This little square will adjust the shape. And so if I drag down, make that taller, and these ones on the side, you can drag them in or out. And you can rotate. It's kind of a flexible command. Let's make that a little bigger. And the little circles in between the perimeter and the head of the pin, these affect where the feathering starts. I'm going to bring those in closer to my bird here. Move this up. Oops, I accidentally got rid of my blurring. And once you're happy with how that looks, you're going to go ahead and click OK. So once again, we've got the pin head, the level of blur. These circles affect where the feathering starts. And then we've got the outer perimeter, and anything outside of that is going to be completely blurred. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And we'll turn that one off. We're also going to do the tilt shift blur. And the reason it's called tilt shift is because you can rotate this thing. So we've got the pin head here. Anything between these two solid lines is not blurred. Going beyond the solid line to the dashed line, that's where the feathering kind of kicks in. And anything beyond the dashed line is totally blurred. So what I'm going to do is kind of position here above one of these solid circles. And I'm going to left drag to rotate this. And then I'm going to move it more onto my bird. I don't really want my bird friend here to be quite as blurry. Whoops. Control and Z comes in helpful. It's the undo command. You know, if you accidentally click and get another control in there. To move these lines, I would recommend being away from these little circles. So, and then you can just left drag. You can also, you know, left drag this area as well. And it kind of comes down to personal preference, you know, how you want this to display, where you want the blurring to start. And in addition to this tilt shift blur, we're going to add a little field blur up here. So to do that, we're actually going to click here, and you see it already put the control in. Move that up here, lessen the amount, and then we're going to put another one right on his beak and change the amount to 0. We'll activate this one again. It's a little bit more blurring above him. And then we'll click OK. So out of the different blur gallery blurs, I want you to turn on whatever combination you like best. And then you're going to save the file.